Give me mine, would you? I think I am. I mean, especially that one line right there. We don't have those things. They're okay on the north and south side.
Is that what it says?
What are these letters?
The one we got today?
I don't have that. Maybe it was in we did a
Call the meeting to order. Ask you to join in welcoming the presentation of the colors by Hellgate Post 27 of the American Legion.
Detail, halt. Right, pace. Trail forward, hard. Detail, halt. Present, hard.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, hard. Left, pace. That trail, come left, hard.
Thank you. Minutes will reflect that all of the members of the council are present except Councilman McLaughlin and Rice. Are there any changes to the minutes of the last meeting? If not, we'll leave them as they have been presented. Under items for final consideration, we have first two items from the Plat Annexation and Zoning Committee. Mr. Reidy.
Yes, although a quorum was not present, the committee recommends that council adopt a one-year extension of Rattlesnake Interim Zoning Districts 2, 3, 3A, 4, and 5, and I so move.
Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Craig.
Yes.
Harrison.
Yes.
Hermes.
Yes.
Luceno.
Yes.
Potts.
Yes.
Reidy.
Yes.
Sampson.
Yep.
Shaffer.
Yes.
Shea.
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
10-0.
Motion carries.
The next one, although a quorum was not present, the committee recommends that the council adopt a one-year extension of Bellevue, Wapikiya Interim Zoning District 1, 2, and 3, and I so move.
Discussion. Roll call.
Harrison.
Yes.
Hermes.
Yes.
Luceno.
Yes.
Potts. Reidy.
Yes.
Sampson.
Yes.
Schaefer.
Yes.
Shea.
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Craig.
Yes.
10-0.
Motion carries. Next two items are from the Public Works Committee. Mr. Cox.
The first is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Missoula, Montana to close and vacate a portion of North Easy Street of the Ben Hughes addition to the City of Missoula. The committee recommended that the council pass a resolution closing and vacating a portion of North Easy Street of the Ben Hughes addition to the City of Missoula with the conditions as stipulated in the resolution, and I would so move.
Any discussion?
Hermes.
Yes.
Luceno.
Yes.
Potts.
Yes.
Reidy.
Yes.
Sampson.
Yes.
Schaefer.
Yes.
Shea.
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Craig.
Yes.
Harrison.
Yes.
10-0.
Motion carries.
The next is a resolution of the Council of the City of Missoula, Montana to create Special Improvement District number 499 of the City of Missoula for the purpose of furnishing and installing street and drainage improvements, including asphalt, cushion base, curb and gutter, and storm drainage sumps. The committee recommended that the council pass a resolution creating a Special Improvement District number 499, the City of Missoula, Montana, for the purpose of furnishing and installing street and drainage improvements, includes asphalt, cushion base, curb and gutter, and storm drain sumps, and I would so move.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Harrison.
We want to pass on this, my employers and adjoining property owners.
Any council discussion? Call the roll, please.
Luceno.
Yes.
Potts.
Yes.
Reidy.
Yes.
Sampson.
Yes.
Schaefer.
Yes.
Shea.
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Craig.
Yes.
Harrison.
Pass.
Hermes.
Yes.
Would the pass care to change his vote?
No change.
No change. 9-0-1.
The resolution's adopted.
The next item is repeal of the promissory note option for payment of...
I don't think that's for final consideration.
Oh, is that in the final consideration? Well, then, that's the end of the report.
All right. We'll go on then to public comments from citizens. It's an opportunity for citizens to address the council. We give you up to 3 minutes to do that. Anyone like to address the council on items other than those set for public hearing this evening? Mr. Lovegrove.
My name is Bob Lovegrove. I'm here tonight as a member of the Executive Committee of the National Forest Service Museum Board of Directors on behalf of Gary Brown. I have a letter that I've passed out to each of you. I would like to read it into the record. It's addressed to Mayor Kemmis and council members. Thank you for providing $10,000 to the National Forest Service Museum. Your continued support is essential and appreciated. These funds will be used to further our fundraising effort. Recently, the Executive Committee of the Board of Directors traveled to Washington, D.C. to brief the Montana congressional delegation about the status of the museum and ask for their continued support. I believe this trip was a successful one. We will continue to keep you informed. Sincerely, Gary Brown, President. I'd like to add to that, as a participant in that trip, that we did meet with the delegation and requested up to $500,000 in the coming fiscal year. We feel our trip was successful because that ball has gotten started rolling, and with any luck, we will see some of those funds coming to Missoula for the purposes of planning the facility itself. And we continue the request into the subsequent fiscal year for an additional $250,000 to see that job got complete. It was very enthusiastically supported by all of the members that we met with, as well as the Chief of the Forest Service, Dale Robertson. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. Other public comment? Yes. Need name and address from each person.
My name is Dan Funch. I live at 521 North Higgins. I've been a Missoula resident for about 6 years, and I wanted to address an action the council took 2 weeks ago, passing the resolution endorsing the Lolo and Kootenai Accords as contained in Max Baux's bill, Senate Bill 72. I also work for the Alliance for the Wild Rockies, a conservation organization based in Missoula, and I was one of the individuals that spent the better part of a month attending Economic Development Committee meetings, trying to hammer out some form of agreement or consensus on that issue. The city was asked to endorse it, and when I heard that the city passed the resolution on that, I went and watched the videotape, and I was really upset with the way that that whole endorsement process transpired. I felt that it was really unfair that two individuals that don't live in Missoula, but in Helena and in the Bitterroot Valley, were able to ramrod this thing through. Essentially, the entire committee process was abandoned. We had spent a whole month working on something. The council took virtually no input from the Missoula public at large on that resolution. And if you read that resolution carefully, I really feel it contains unsubstantiated and, in fact, fraudulent statements that I feel real uncomfortable as a citizen having our council support. So I'm kind of distressed with that whole thing. And I've been circulating petitions on my own time. I don't want to turn them in now, but these petitions call for a repeal of the resolution, and they also go on to say that any further consideration of that Senate bill be done with full participation, hearings, and public involvement. And we've got 30 organizations and businesses all in Missoula that have signed this petition so far, and hundreds of individuals. And I just want to register my stern, disapproval and upset with that whole process.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the council on items other than those set for public hearing? The record will reflect that Mr. Rice is now present.
My name is Mike Chesson, 400 University Avenue, and I'm a new member of the board of Missoula Community Access Television. I've been asked to read the weekly report, the cable casting, programming, production, and training report for June 17th, 1991. A record-breaking amount of community programming was presented on MCAT during the month of May, with 178.5 hours of live or videotaped cable casting. This resulted in an average of over 40 hours per week. With the 115 hours of community message board with KOFM audio added in, the weekly average jumped to 66 hours and 26 minutes, or 9.5 hours per day. The 42-plus hours of live television and 101 hours of premiere, that is first-run, programming were also new records. Premieres accounted for 57% of the cable cast total, and an amazing 63% of programming was locally produced. 59 brand-new volunteer producers received training in basic TV production during May, which brings MCAT's total to 663 individuals. Not bad for a two-person staff in 14 months. Recent program highlights include Hellgate High School's ambitious 25-hour live Life Appreciation Festival, May 17th and 18th, and the Mansfield Conference at the University of Montana. Some of the Mansfield speakers went out live on MCAT. They all were videotaped and are currently being replayed Wednesdays at 7 p.m. and Thursdays at 1:30 p.m. MCAT was relocated to Channel 7 on June 3rd as part of TCI Cable's realignment. It's a terrific spot, but we're still sharing time with the Weather Channel. Increasing numbers of TCI subscribers will be able to see the Weather Channel on Channel 36 as they are hooked up to the rebuilt cable system. but some viewers will not receive Channel 36 until much later in the year. To accommodate those viewers, MCAT will throw Channel 7 back to the Weather Channel between 3 and 4 p.m. on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and Tuesdays when the City Council replay is less than 3 hours. MCAT is busy planning the Fall Regional Conference of the National Federation of Local Cable Programmers, Northwest Region, which will be held at Missoula's Village Red Lion the last weekend of September 27th through 29th, 1991. This will be the first full community cable television conference to be held in the state of Montana. You are all invited. Watch this space for more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that update. My recollection of May is that we alone provided at least 40 hours a week live just on Monday nights here. Anyone else like to address the council? Yes, sir.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Mike Bader, Missoula resident, 1721 Helen. I would also like to register my very strong disapproval of the way the council endorsed the Senate Bill 72. Clearly, the council has every right to endorse whatever it would like. However, we don't like the way that the procedures were followed, where there was virtually no public involvement. Clearly, there was no public hearing. An issue like this has a great amount of importance to people from Missoula, regardless of what the outcome of the forest lands, what the management would be. I, as well as Dan Funch, spent a lot of time in the Economic Development Committee working on this. We had also, earlier in the year, worked with the Missoula County Commissioners who had come up with what we think is a lot more fair approach, where they listened to a lot of different viewpoints and incorporated those viewpoints into their final letter on the matter. And really am disappointed with the way that you've done this. I echo Mr. Funch's comments that we feel that people who do not reside in Missoula were heard long and hard on this, and people who actually reside in the city, the people you're supposed to represent, were pretty muted on the matter, and I think it's a sad statement, so wanted to let you know that didn't like it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comment?
My name is Linda Smith. I live at 545 Woodford. And I've come tonight to comment also on how the City Council handled the Lolo Kootenai Accord resolution decision at the June 3rd Council meeting. I've been trying to follow the process of the Accords and reading about a bioregional approach towards forest management that includes adequate habitat and corridors to allow for biological diversity. It is my understanding that the City Council's Economic Development Committee went through many weeks of discussion to arrive at a compromise endorsement of the Accords in a broader context with some qualifications. The participants in the Economic Development Committee discussion agreed to write a letter of endorsement of the Accords with additional recommendations recognizing the importance of a bioregional approach and some modification of the release language. The letter was never brought before the City Council for discussion. It is very important to me that complicated, controversial issues which require weeks of discussion in committee come before the council for public discussion by the council with a chance for the public to respond before there is a vote, and that there be a public record of the discussion and the vote. We need to acknowledge and honor the time spent working through different positions on complex issues to reach enough agreement to go forward. As our elected representatives, it is one of the council's roles to help the community consider different points of view on controversial issues through public discussion. As a citizen who wants to understand some of the complexities surrounding the remaining roadless areas, I feel cheated out of my right to hear and respond to the results of the public discussion that lasted for several weeks in the Economic Development Committee. I believe the public has a right to hear a report in a public forum before our representatives vote on a resolution representing only one side of the issue. Lobbying council members by telephone is a private process and is no way equivalent to open public discussion. To me, a city council is different from a traditional political party that believes winning justifies using any means necessary, even if it means not honoring the process that they have created. We, the public, deserve better. It doesn't feel good to know your elected representatives will change the rules to keep the public out of the process if there is a need for political expediency. For example, it looks like the decision on the Lola Kootenai Accords resolution was tied to a congressional hearing with possible connections to a political office. I want to know the people who represent me will acknowledge the importance of their own committee structure and will not allow the results of long hours of discussion to arrive at compromise to be run over. How can we trust the City Council not to violate its committee and public involvement process on other issues? To conclude, I request the Council at a minimum to discuss the Economic Development Committee's endorsement letter of the Lola Kootenai Accords long enough to do justice to the complexity of the issue and to create a record of the public discussion. And if another resolution is requested, there should be some way public opinion is included in a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment this evening? If not, we'll go forward to the public hearings. First is a zoning hearing on a request by the Masonic Temple Association and Dos Lobos Restaurant to rezone lots 17 and 18 in the west half of lot 19, Block C, CP Higgins Edition, at 130 East Broadway from CLB1 Commercial Beer and Wine Overlay to CLB Commercial Liquor Beer and Wine Overlay. Is there a staff report? Catherine?
Excuse me. Catherine Evans, Office of Community Development. This is a property owner request to rezone a portion of the Masonic Temple building presently occupied by Dos Lobos Restaurant from Central Business District, CBD zone, with a CLB1, that is a commercial on-premises beer and wine establishment zone, to a CBD, Central Business District zone, with a CLB, commercial on-premises liquor and beer establishment zone overlay. The applicants are the property owners, the Masonic Temple Association, along with the tenant Joseph Wamsley, who is the owner of Dos Lobos Restaurant. The location of this requested change is 130 East Broadway, and that is inclusive only of Lot 18, Block C, CP Higgins Edition. The liquor license, which will be moved to this location if the request is granted, is presently located at the VFW Lounge, which is in the basement level of the Double Front Restaurant at 122 West Alder Street. The local VFW sponsors this liquor establishment, and they have been trying to relocate to a ground floor accessible location in the downtown area. The new liquor license will be used in the same location as the beer and wine bar, which is presently located in Dos Lobos Restaurant. In the staff report, staff recommended approval of this requested zoning. The reasons included that the proposed use was consistent with the comprehensive plan and the 1990 update. The Central Business District is designated for mixed commercial and residential uses, and eating and drinking establishments serve downtown office workers and visitors and add to downtown vitality and use. Downtown also has all public services, and there were no negative comments for the most part from agencies. There is a comment by the fire department, however. They are very concerned about fire code violations in the Masonic Temple, some of which were cited approximately a year ago. Our staff has looked at these violations and the relationship to zoning and determined that it would be appropriate to go ahead with the rezoning, that the process of the 5 to 6 weeks over which rezoning takes place might offer the owners of the building and the various tenants an opportunity to come to some negotiation and to some resolution of their problems on the building. At the public hearing, which was sponsored by the planning board, there was a comment by an adjacent property tenant that the introduction of liquor would add to downtown noise and possibly involve some concerns on the part of individuals regarding personal safety. There are two criteria or two standards that council must look at in approving a CLB zone overlay. One is the zoning justified by public convenience? And secondarily, whether the zoning will not adversely or seriously affect the people residing in the vicinity of the property for which the zoning designation is requested. The planning board recommended the following motion and voted on it unanimously, and I'll go over that resolution. After reviewing all testimony and documentation, and based on the findings of fact contained in the staff report, the board recommends that the property located at 130 East Broadway, as legally described in Attachment 1 and shown in Attachment 2 of the staff report, receive a CLB zoning designation in order to be able to serve liquor as well as wine and beer, which is now available in the restaurant bar. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Catherine? Thank you. Are there any representatives of the applicants who would like to speak to this? Anyone else like to address the council on this matter? Yes.
My name is Helen Jensen, and I live in the Patty Street Apartments. I'm the one who spoke against this at the Planning and Zoning Committee. This area is residential in the majority and has historically been. The Patty Street Apartments has 22 apartments there. And there is a church within a half block of the back door of Dos Lobos. And I had a private conversation after that hearing with Joe Walmsley and with Dave Fowlks, who represented the VFW post, in which they told me that the area may even be upgraded because there would be law enforcement vehicles parked there. And I question this. If there are law enforcement vehicles parked there, then that means that on-duty officers are frequenting a bar, which I question. Mr. Walmsley also said that the hours that they would have there would be the same as they have now, with only to 12 o'clock at night, and that they don't allow transients in that bar. Well, I don't think Mr. Walmsley's going to be in control of that if it's going to be the VFW bar, and I firmly doubt that if there's a party going on there, then there's money flowing, that they're going to close it down until they're legally required to close it down. And the more I thought about this, the more I felt that the things that they said to me were a humongous earthenware container of male bovine excrement. I had a daughter who worked for Gene Herndon at Double Front, and Gene Herndon told me when I went in there with her that he did not allow his waitresses to go downstairs to serve food because of the character of that bar, and they installed a dumbwaiter because of that. And I've since talked with several people who won't even eat at the Double Front because of that bar being there. So I question the fact that they're saying that it's not going to adversely affect the neighborhood to be moved down there. And also, when I went through the report that was given, they had listed the laws which concern the establishment of the zoning overlay, which they have. And in section 19.24.030 of the restrictions, on B. It says sales and consumption of alcoholic beverage for on-premises consumption shall be only permitted as an auxiliary use to a restaurant. The alcohol sales shall be clearly and factually subordinate and incidental to the principal restaurant use. In no case shall such accessory use dominate in any area, sales, extent, or purpose the principal restaurant use of the building. They have a separate bar, which going through the back door, you have to go through the bar to get into the restaurant, which you don't have to go through the restaurant to get to, through the front door, which is entirely separate from the restaurant, has no connection with restaurant business. And I consider this a violation of what it says in this zoning restriction. And on those basis, I'm asking this council not only to disapprove the new zoning overlay they're asking for, but to repeal the one they have because they've been in violation of it from the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other testimony on this matter? Any other testimony? Mr. Rice?
I wonder if I could ask Catherine Evans a question.
Catherine Evans.
In your opinion, it sounds like this, in fact, the findings of fact indicate that this will be a Dos Lobos VFW lounge situation. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what we understand it to be.
So this is, in fact, the resurrection of a request that, in fact, we've already seen at least once in a different form.
Are you perhaps thinking of Fetcher's CLB
Maybe I am.
request down at the...
Okay, so it's different.
I think it is different,
Have
yes.
you had any, or has anybody had any complaints about the operation in the basement of Double Front? Is there a record of that? Did you go and ask the police department for any record of that?
We asked the police department as a matter of agency concern about rezonings in other locations. We did not ask specifically about the behavior at the Double Front bar.
I think that in light of the representations that were just made, it would be appropriate to ask the police department if there have been any extraordinary incidents at the location of the license now, and to present that at PAZ this week. If that's not possible, then I think by next Monday night it would be appropriate.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine. Any other testimony? Speaking of the police department, regardless of any other concerns you might have, I can assure you that on-duty policemen will not be frequenting the bar.
Unless there's a disturbance.
Yes, that's right. In which case, they still won't be frequenting.
Well, they won't be drinking.
Any other testimony? If not, we'll close this public hearing. We'll go on to a public hearing on a request to place a manufactured home on lots 7 and 8 of block 52 in the Knowles edition at 640 River Street. The property is located on the northeast corner of River and Hickory Streets. Staff report. Pat?
My name is Pat Kiley, Office of Community Development. Mr. Bob Dishner is requesting to place a manufactured home at 640 River Street, which is known as Lots 7 and 8 of Block 52 of Knowles Edition. The property is currently vacant and has no history of manufactured home use. I took pictures of the property and of the surrounding neighborhood, and I'd like to pass those out at this time. The property is zoned R2 to family residential. The main point in this case is that manufactured homes are not allowed in the city except in 2 cases, and the first case being in designated mobile home trailer courts, and the second case is where the property has previously been occupied buy a manufactured or mobile home. This property, as I stated before, has not been occupied by a manufactured home, and it's not included in a designated mobile home trailer court. Therefore, the Office of Community Development cannot issue a zoning compliance permit to allow the placement of the manufactured home at 640 River Street. Our office sent letters to adjacent property owners within 150 feet of the property as part of a notification procedure. We also made notification posters and placed those surrounding the property. In addition, we published a legal ad in the Missoulian to notify the public of Mr. Dishner's request. In terms of public comment, our office received letters of inquiry and opposition to the placing of the manufactured home on River Street. And if you'll reference your packet, attachments D through H, you'll see those letters of opposition and inquiry. We received 2 letters after we mailed the packets to the council, and one letter, petition 6974, you should have attached to your packet. The second letter is a letter I received today from Tom Peel, who lives right across the street from where this manufactured home is proposed to go in, and I'll pass his letter out at this time. We also notified city agencies of Mr. Dishner's request. We notified the fire department, the building department, engineering, police, and health departments. The health department had a concern, and that was dealing with the drain field. They would like to see a site plan which indicates where the drain field would be on the site. In terms of background, in this case, Mr. Dishner made a similar request to place a mobile home or a manufactured home, I'm not specifically sure which one it was, on the same property about 6 months ago. And on December 17th of 1990, the City Council voted to deny that request. I have additional copies of the letter I handed the council out, as well as additional packets that we prepared for this case, and I'll put those on the table next to the door. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Pat? Mr. Shaffer.
In the snapshots you passed around, I noticed a picture of some mobile homes, or at least one mobile home. Where is that?
I'm not sure which picture you were referring
It looked
to.
like a mobile home. There was a lot of trees there.
Maybe if you could pick that one out.
I don't see one. Is it? No, sir. I thought I saw one. Oh, this, oh, I thought this was, it's not. It isn't.
I don't believe there's any...
Pat, wait till you get to the mic. Thanks.
I don't believe there's any mobile homes or manufactured homes in that immediate neighborhood. They're all stick-built homes.
Any questions for Pat in addition? Thank you. Mr. Dishner, would you like to address the council?
Yes, my name is Bob Dishner. I live at 4720 Richley. The reason I appealed to the council was because my attorney had contacted Mr. Nugent, and his advice was to reappeal, come back in front of the council. And this is the reason I'm here. Seems to me like there's an awful lot of people involved that don't need to be involved by the neighborhood associations. I do feel that they are great groups, you know, but there's people that are involved 6, 7, 8 blocks away that really don't have anything to do with this problem as far as a manufactured home goes. The property has been vacant for basically 30 years, and as you can tell by the growth and the weeds and everything else, and if there was at least a manufactured home or a nice home down there in that area, it would sure bring in a lot more taxes to the city, and it would sure be a great improvement to the area. And I doubt if there's any houses down there in that area that are newer than 30 years old. Everybody was wondering the other night at the neighborhood association meeting, what would your home look like in 20 years? Well, it doesn't matter if a person has a $100,000 home or a $50,000 home. If a person doesn't take care of it, it deteriorates. And if a person puts out that kind of investment, at least the person wants to take care of it. And that's the way I feel about it. Bob was there at the meeting the other night, and I appreciated him being there. I don't know how many from the neighborhood association are here tonight. I didn't recognize anybody, but maybe there are. But I appreciated Bob being there and representing people in the area, and I appreciate the council taking the time to listen to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Dishner? Would anyone else like to address the council on this matter? Any other testimony? If not, we'll close the public hearing. We'll go on to a hearing continued from June 10th on an ordinance adopting Chapter 8.62 Missoula Municipal Code, establishing that both pre- and post-application notification of application of pesticides must be given by posting signage on the property. This is a continuation of a hearing which we began last week. We heard a great deal of testimony last week, and we would ask that anyone who addressed the council this evening try to not make it repetitive of what we have heard before. We would also ask that we hear only from people who have not had an opportunity to testify before.
My name is Fred Sargison. I live at 429 East Pine and am the past chair of the Montana Public Interest Research Group. You've already heard Montberg's testimony, and I'm not going to take any more of your time except to add my support of the ordinance as a citizen of Missoula. Thanks.
Thank you, Fred. I might mention that we'll continue the rules that we established last week, allowing 3 minutes maximum for each testimony.
Hello, my name is Joan Camp. I live at 1431 Jackson, and I'm a real user of the city parks. I'm a real avid soccer fan. I play lots of pickup soccer, lots of games, lots of practices. We dissect every play after our games and sit out there a long time. I use the parks to run in. A lot of times they're on my route. I'm an avid two-person volleyball player, and we get together weekly and use the parks for that. We eat there as well. And I also have a lot of concerns about the use of pesticides on health, and I don't think that it's asking too much to ask that people are not warned but informed, and I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Rita Daka, and I live at 821 South 6th Street West. I've been a homeowner there for 3 years, and I'm here to speak in support of the ordinance requiring the posting of signs before and after applying pesticides. If one of my neighbors is planning to use a pesticide, I want to know about it. The posting of a large, bright, readable sign 24 hours prior to application is a minor inconvenience compared to what I perceive as devastating effects to my property. I need adequate time to cover my surface crops. Tomatoes, lettuce, strawberries, and a variety of herbs, grains, fruits, and vegetables are all plants that I eat out of my garden. If I know in advance that my yard will be exposed to these poisons, I can protect myself and my plants. If I know in advance that one of my neighbors is planning to use pesticides, I can close my windows before I go to work, and I can avoid using my clothesline. I can cancel plans with friends whose children are coming over to play in my yard. I can temporarily remove the bird baths and bird feeders so they do not become contaminated by pesticides. I can keep my cat in the house. To many of us, our yards are extensions of our homes. We actually live in our gardens along with honeybees and hummingbirds and earthworms and butterflies, and we care about these things. It's my right to know if poison is going to be released into my neighborhood so I can take appropriate steps to protect myself, my family, and the lifestyle that I strive to sustain. I urge you to adopt the ordinance with a 24-hour pre-notification, 48-hour post-notification signage requirement intact. It is a courtesy that those of us who do not choose to use pesticides deserve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wayne Burton, 436 Ford. I support the ordinance. And I used to be a custodian at Hellgate High School. And people used to come in and spray for insects. And I remember one night, one old fellow was overcame by the spray, and he passed out and rolled all the way down the stairs from second floor to first floor. And there was another person who had to go home every time that they sprayed.
Thank you.
My name is Dave Tribble. I live at 412 West Central. I've been a homeowner for 25 years. And as far as putting up signs on my property when I have an insect problem, I think it's a waste of time because I would rather have a little bit of insecticide in my house than be stung by a bunch of bees. I think there's been a lot of, well, let me put it this way. These guys who use this insecticide know what they're doing. They're not going to come out and hurt anybody else because they're going to be open for a lawsuit if they do. I think that this proposal that you're putting up is a waste of time. I think there's too many people watching too many toxic movies, and they better get in reality.
Thank you.
My name is Randy York. I reside with my wife, Marty, and my two daughters at 620 Woodford. In speaking tonight, I'm not trying to portray myself as a pesticide expert, far be it. Nor am I here to debate the safety and scientific aspects of pesticide usage, though if necessary, I'm quite willing to discuss such issues from a very deeply concerned perspective. Rather, I'm here to express my family's support, my wife, my two daughters, and my own, my pet support for this ordinance, and to encourage the council's adoption of such. Cognizant of the potential health and environmental hazards associated with pesticide use, and aware of the wide extent to which pesticides are used with my own neighborhood and community, I support this ordinance for several reasons. And I'd like to preface these reasons with the comments that I too have used pesticides. I use them occasionally. I take care of my neighbor's lawn. She's in her 80s and she insists upon it. I try to do so in a very, well, if I can, as safe as possible, following all precautions. However, back to this ordinance. This ordinance provides nothing more than the right which I consider basic and essential, namely the right to know whenever my family, our pets, and our own vegetation face a possible exposure to life-threatening chemicals. What this ordinance requires of a pesticide applicator, whether that be myself, other members of my family, or my neighbors, is nothing more than the moral and social obligation of informing others of the use of dangerous chemicals. It is only right that anyone who may inadvertently be exposed to such chemicals should be afforded the protection as prescribed by the warning labels on these various containers. If someone is not aware that an area has been sprayed, then they're not able to follow the precautions. And I know many times when I have moved through an area and I can smell it and detect it in the air, and I see pets running across the lawn, our kids playing on that lawn. I wonder if their parents are aware of it and their owners are aware of it. If and when my wife and I find it necessary to use pesticides, we owe this warning to our neighbors and to those who innocently pass by or cross our property. Likewise, I strongly believe that my family in turn has the same basic right to be so informed. I consider this ordinance to be an effective and inexpensive means of providing my family with this basic right to knowledge, to knowing. Furthermore, it does this without depriving anyone of the opportunity to use pesticides in an informed and careful manner. Nothing in this ordinance restricts anyone, myself included, from using pesticides or interferes with the proper application of such. If, as applicators, my neighbor and my wife and anybody else in my family or neighborhood find that this minor inconvenience of posting warning signs to be of too much effort or trouble, then I think we should re-examine whether or not we're going to take the time to follow the precautions properly. If, as an applicator, we fear that posting of warnings will draw attention to our pesticide use, thus possibly causing tinges of guilt or fear of a little bit of neighborhood embarrassment, then possibly we should sit back and take heed of this guilt and not spray. I personally believe that such an ordinance will not prevent any potential applicator from using pesticides in an informed manner. In fact, I simply think that it reassures others that these applicators are using some sanity in how they apply these pesticides, simply because they've taken the time to show the respect to their neighbors and warn them of their usage.
Mr. York, your 3 minutes is up. I'll let you finish.
Okay, there's only one single issue about the ordinance that concerns me. In relation to Section H, which talks about the penalties, I urge the writers, people that have introduced this ordinance, that they possibly move the last sentence of Section 7, which deals with the fact that they're given warning the first times, to Section 8 under penalties, or at least restated in that section. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Curtis Horton. I reside at 6103 Longview Drive. I've been a 20-year resident of Missoula in Ward 6 and the past few years in Ward 5. First, I'd like to say, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, I haven't participated in civic government much, and it amazes me at your patience. There's some cool heads here and some wise heads, I think. And all I can give is my own personal opinion on this, except for the fact that 2 years ago, I was the guy spraying. I sprayed my fruit trees 3 or 4 times a year, still had bugs. I had my lawn sprayed 4 times. They guaranteed me it'd take out the dandelions. Didn't. We were in California when they were spraying malathion for the medfly. We were in Oregon when they were spraying the orchards. Make a long story short, my wife's about dead. I went to the Mayo Clinic. They sent her home to die. Pesticide poisoning, gentlemen. And I guarantee you I've got a different outlook on it now than I had last year when I was the guy spraying. Some people are more susceptible to this, and there's a large difference between having an allergy and being poisoned. She was poisoned. You know, any way this thing goes, there are going to be some people that are going to be unhappy. It's going to be inconvenient to the applicators, perhaps to the homeowners, if they have to do it. If they don't do it, it's potential health hazard to the residents. And I think if we're going to have to make a judgment call and possibly err, that we should err on the side of giving people more information rather than less, giving them more options and ways to deal with this rather than less. Our neighborhood is thick with little kids, and Mr. McLaughlin stated last week on TV that he had a dozen calls, and all of them were against this ordinance. I put on smiles up and down that hill, and I can't find any of those 12 people.
Mr. Luceno?
I'd like to ask Mr. Horton a question. Would you mind elaborating a little further on exactly what happened to your wife in this poisoning?
Yes, I would. It's pesticides that affect the brain. It's actually a motor neuron damage. They affect the brain. She gradually lost the use of her hands, her arms, her legs. She was to the point when we were at the Mayo Clinic, she could not raise her head off the pillow. Since we have come back and taken an alternative health approach, we found that there are some things that can flush these things from the system given time. Unfortunately, the nerve damage is slow to heal. but she is improving some. And I would say that if I were an applicator, I would want the ordinance. That would clear me from any possible lawsuits, because if you put those signs up, you're clear. You've done what the law requires. You've given official notification. If people have a problem, it's up to them to get away from there. They can leave. On the other hand, if somebody comes in and sprays and she has a relapse, we'll sue.
Mrs. Shaffer.
Mr. Horton?
Yes.
You referred, or you mentioned a couple of times, when you were the applicator, did you mean you were a professional applicator, or were you you just did it
Right.
homeowner?
Well, we have professional applicators in, and then I also bought the stuff at the hardware stores and the Kmart and wherever.
Thank you. I just wasn't clear what you meant.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Dr. Amy Haynes. I'm at 521 South 2nd West. I've been practicing in Missoula as a naturopathic physician since 1984. I've been studying nature's impact on human health for over 12 years. In my practice, I see many illnesses that are directly related to environmental toxins such as herbicides, insecticides, pesticides, and heavy metals. It's not uncommon for me to treat a child's case of asthma directly after a neighbor's lawn treatment to get rid of weeds. Allergies, upper respiratory tract infections, headaches, nausea, gastric upsets, dermatitis, and infertility can be a result of such chemical use. When you poison the plant kingdom, you will poison the animal kingdom. Human beings are not exempt from this. I deplore the use of these chemicals, and I encourage this council to vote in favor of this ordinance as the least you can do for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
My name is Mark Miner. I live at 2244 Briggs Street. I represent Ecolab Pest Elimination Division, and I'm a third generation in the pest elimination industry. I'm concerned about this proposed city ordinance involving the application of herbicides, insecticides, and rodenticides. The notification is what I am here for tonight. From what I understand of the proposition, it does not allow me to take care of my present customers and future customers in a timely manner. A 24-hour waiting period prior to treatment could pose a great danger to some people. For example, if I should get a call from a woman who asks me to get over to her home right away because she has a large wasp nest in the tree next to her front door. When I arrive, I find out that she and her children are highly allergic to insect stings. Now I have to tell her I'll be glad to get rid of the nest, but she will have to wait 24 hours because I have to place 2 8x10 signs in her yard stating that there will be pesticides applied to the nest. Now 24 hours has passed and I arrive to take care of the problem, but come to find out that one of her children was stung and went into anaphylactic shock and is now in the hospital. Now where does the liability lie for that? The pest control industry is regulated by 2 groups, the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Agriculture. The Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, Rodenticide Act gave these 2 groups the power to grant a label to a product manufacturer after an intensive study of the product. And the Department of Agriculture was given the power of licensing and certifying of applicators. It is the Department of Agriculture which is our closest governing body. They make inspections of our service vehicles periodically to check and see if we are maintaining their guidelines. In short, in the pest elimination and ornamental and turf business, we have quite a system of checks and balances. As far as my own personal health history goes, I'm a third generation in this line of work. There have never been deformities, crib deaths among my children or relatives, nor have there been any lung dysfunction or abnormalities. My father was in this business for 36 years, and also was my grandfather. I offer as proof of my good health a full-scale medical examination that was taken last year, which checked me out for everything under the sun, including organophosphates. I had a clean bill of health on everything tested for. If you think about it, I probably have 100% times the exposure rate compared to the general public. I feel that this medical report should attest to the safety of the products we use in accordance with all label directions. If this ordinance is passed, what will be next? Waxes, wax strippers, toilet bowl cleaner. They also have material safety data sheets which claim them to be hazardous, but yet we think nothing of them because we take the time to read the label. It just makes good sense to read it because the label is the law.
Couple of questions, Mr. Minor. Mrs. Craig?
Mr. Minor, in your example of the bee sting, the wasp nest, did you realize in the ordinance that you could spray 25 square feet? That is an exemption.
Is it 25 square feet or is it
5 feet square?
5 feet square?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if we were to go tackle that, take on that nest, and the nest breaks apart, now what?
Mr. Luceno?
Real quick.
My question is, what percentage of the total calls, that is to say the house calls that you make, what percentage of those calls would you estimate require immediate attention, where, for instance, this 24-hour posting would be very inconvenient?
Well, in the case of any type of stinging insect, I would say 100% of the time do it right then and there. That way, some people do not know that they're allergic, that they would have an allergic reaction. Therefore, why put them in that risk? Other calls, I suppose you could say, take for instance a restaurant that has all of a sudden a mouse problem. They do happen just like that. Not always, but sometimes. Now the restaurant owner calls you up and says, Mr. Ecolab, Mr. Orkin, please get rid of this problem. It's going to drive my customers away if they see mice. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Restaurant owner, but you'll have to wait 24 hours. In that period of time, where are they going to be? They're going to probably be in the walls and up in the attic or down the crawl space.
I recognize the point you're making, and it's a good point. In your total calls, though, I am curious, what percentage of your total calls are we in this kind of a category?
I haven't thought about it. I couldn't tell you exact figures. I could get with my colleagues and give you some kind of an answer.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Before we go on with testimony, I have a couple of letters that I've been asked to read into the record. That's fine, thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Minor.
Oh, you do?
Yes. Mr. Minor, looking over your medical history there, the record, it shows that you have allergies. Did you have those?
Not that I had.
Someone in your family?
My sister.
Okay, it said, have you ever had, and it was under the section of, the family was on the top, and then your own medical history, and allergies was checked, and so I just wondered.
Right, but not the pesticides, it was dusts, mildews.
As a child, or?
As a child.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. This first letter is from Dr. Paul Lunan. Dear Mayor, Kemmis, and council members, I'm writing as a proponent of the Missoula pesticide ordinance. As a pulmonary physician, I'm very sensitive to the effects of pollutants and potential harmful substances in the air we breathe. The average human being inhales approximately 30 pounds of air per day versus eating only 3 pounds of food. Thus, if there is a hazardous substance equally distributed in the air and in the food we eat, we ingest 10 times as much of that material if it is dispersed in the air. It took over 40 years for us to finally recognize the harmful effects of asbestos exposure, and an equally long time for us to recognize the harmful effects of tobacco use. Society and taxpayers are now paying dearly for the cost of the lung diseases induced by exposure to both asbestos and tobacco. Pesticides are complex, and there are literally hundreds of chemical compounds and chemical reactions to which we are exposed. The exact medical impact of this is undefined and will take many years to clarify, if ever. Because these substances are definitely potentially harmful and in a number of instances have been proved to be harmful, I think it is only prudent to inform the public at large regarding an area in which these pesticides are present. I thus think it is only common sense and socially responsible for appropriate signs to be placed in any area where these known and potential toxins are suspended in the air that we breathe. I'll read the other one a little later. Lady right in the back row has been waiting for a chance to testify. Please.
My name is Darlene Schmid, and I reside at 110 South Avenue West. I'm a concerned citizen, and I guess I can say I'm a second-generation native of Missoula. I've never spoken to the council before, and I guess I feel obligated to come today and talk to you because this is a really important issue to me. I'm a nurse. I'm a registered nurse, and I'm also a health educator. And I wrote a letter, but I didn't get it done in time, so I'll read it. It's obvious to me that the reason why most of us live here is not only because we want to live in a pristine environment, but also because we want the freedom of choice. And I'm looking at the issues of these pesticides from several different angles. As a nurse and a health educator, it's my professional duty to promote health and wellness and to help people make informed decisions about their health behavior. We do not know the cause of many of these illnesses that we see today. As Dr. Haynes was talking about asthma, allergies, dermatitis, we see a lot of this, and we treat the symptoms, but we do not know what the cause is, so we can't treat the cause. While it is difficult to prove the cause and effect relationship, we often know that certain things may be related. An example is the length of time it took to prove that smoking cigarettes was related to lung cancer and heart disease. I believe that my colleagues in the health profession would agree that if given a choice, it would be safest to avoid areas that have been recently sprayed with pesticides. Just as air pollution or cigarettes, a warning sign allows people to make a choice to live a healthier life. It is our job to help people stay well and promote positive choices with regards to their health. A lot of people do not get sick from cigarettes. They can smoke cigarettes for 30 or 40 years and they never get lung cancer. So does that mean we shouldn't make it a risk for everyone else to be aware of? No. In addition to my profession, I participate in sporting activities in the city parks, and I own a couple of dogs. Last weekend we had a wonderful soccer tournament here, and there were lots of kids and dogs playing in the grass and eating the grass. A good couple friends of mine are veterinarians or are veterinary people and have worked in the field of animal care. And they have mentioned that every year pets die, kind of unnecessarily, I would guess, from what they consider to be pesticide overexposure. Let me repeat, we do not know what the causes of many of the symptoms and illnesses that we have today are. Why not play on the safe side and let people be free to make informed choices? This ordinance does not prohibit the use of pesticides. It merely lets people make informed, free decisions of whether or not they want to be exposed. That's all I say. I think we should support this.
Thank you. Further testimony?
Mayor, I'd like to cover 2 points tonight. The first one is, I was here last night. I'm Jack Schultz, 801 Poplar. And you have the poorest microphone in the room. I could hear you better out of the monitor, but maybe something can be done about that. Some of us have a little difficulty with that. I'd like to start my presentation tonight in going back a few months when this ordinance, or the comparable bill, was introduced in Helena, where the flag was to go up 24 hours before and stay up for 2 days afterwards. And my first impression was another nuisance ordinance, and it was going to be statewide. Well, I don't know what happened to that bill. It was died or was killed or disappeared. And then the other week, when this reappeared in Missoula, my feelings were softened a bit, but they were similar. So I came here last week to find out what it was about. And I got here a little late, so the supply of ordinances were gone. And I called the City Hall next day and got a copy. But last week, I heard many comments, pro and con, and they were good. And they expressed the concern for people to have the right to know, and also for businesses and professional applicators to proceed with their work. I use pesticides, and I have for a number of years. For a number of years prior to that, probably back 10, 15 years ago, I didn't use any to speak of that I can remember. I grew up in an era when DDT was known as one of the wonder weapons of World War II, and I also saw its demise before Silent Spring, and rightfully so. Not necessarily the demise, but the investigation into it. And I think that that is what this ordinance could do for us. It's a little squeak in the wilderness here. I think someone said last week that there were 26 communities around the country that were considering this ordinance. Well, there should be a louder message sent to government and to industry to inform all of us in a better way what we're facing. We do not know, and they do not know. I am for this ordinance. I think aside from the points that have been brought up, yay and nay, it has two other values. One is it adds a margin of safety for all of us and the applicator. And secondly, I think it will improve the application of the pesticide, whatever it might be, because we have to go through the physical setting of flags, which seems like a small thing, but it can be done. I think also this is not an insurmountable demand or request on the parts of commercial applicators, nor the homeowner, which can pick up some of the responsibility on this. There are many little wrinkles that can be resolved and will be resolved one way or the other with this.
Mr. Schultz, your 3 minutes is up.
Okay.
You have a chance to finish them.
May I put on another cap for a minute?
Well.
And
you'll have to give us a new name and address, though.
I have a new name, and I have a new address. The new name is John H. Schultz, and I am the president of the Council on Urban Forestry here in Missoula. That's a group of people who have an interest in the trees in Missoula, and of course we have many people who have varying ranges of knowledge on pesticides and whatnot. The response I referred to a bit ago from when this was first introduced in Helena, we were at a meeting, I guess that was February, and we called around and got information on that, and the consensus was that we could live with it. And then it was dropped, like I said. And then when it showed up, we were able to have a meeting in April where we discussed this, and then it came up here again, and we discussed it just last week. There was no formal vote, but we do have professional applicators in that group, and the consensus, without a vote, was that we could live with this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
Mayor Kemmis, City Council members, my name is John McMillan. I reside at 2223 South 3rd Street West. For my presentation, I'd like to show a brief video excerpt from the CBS Evening News report pertaining to the subject.
Go ahead.
Outdoors and when she's clad in a protective suit, her respirator in easy reach. To her, the pesticides widely used in lawn treatment are simply poison.
I started having difficulty with breathing, and I looked at my arms and my legs, and I had red spots popping up all over my arms and my legs. And I couldn't talk. I felt like I was being choked.
Chemical sensitive people may be different. We're talking about a population group that is growing and is sensitized over time.
Professional lawn care, now $1.5 billion a year industry, has spread from the backyard to schools, golf courses, and baseball diamonds. Some of the chemicals in use are related to poison gases developed by the Germans in World War II and stockpiled by Saddam Hussein.
The lawn care chemical problem is a ticking public health time bomb. And the reality is that we don't know whether or when it's going to explode.
Some of the blame for what we don't know can be dumped on this yard. 19 years ago, the EPA was ordered to investigate the potential for health damage of every pesticide then registered for sale. Yet for 32 of the most widely used pesticides, there is still no verdict.
The real problem is in the absence of resources devoted to this effort.
This has not stopped some lawn care companies from continuing to point to long ago EPA registrations to sue customers who ask, is it safe?
All that means is that the manufacturer of that chemical has registered it with the EPA. EPA really has not done a total health check on it. In some cases, whatever health check was done as long ago as 3 decades. This brochure, CBS News picked up at an Horton office in Atlanta, claims the company uses material that has been approved by the EPA and state governments. When we called Horton, an employee told us the name of one pesticide he used. That pesticide is still under study by the EPA and has not been approved. Another employee told us the company uses only chemicals that are absolutely safe. Pesticides actually do sting when used carefully. There is some risk of using all.
One measure of the risk. Of the 33 top lawn pesticides, 9 have been linked to cancer. 9 are tied to kidney and liver illness, and 20 can damage the nervous system. Diazinon, which kills insects, killed so many birds, the EPA banned its use on golf courses, but not home yards. The industry has retreated from overblown safety claims in the face of lawsuits, yet it continues to insist the health risk is minimal.
If the EPA hasn't finished its study, then how can you be so sure that these things are safe? Well, I think basically we have the material that's available to us, the research that's been available to us, that's all we can go on.
These are the chemicals that go into the lawn, that go into the rainwater. The lawn care business is also being needled by Canadian John Cleese. They go into the people who put the chemicals on the lawn in the first place. Cleese's commercials for an organic fertilizer try to capitalize on the growing fear of overdosed yards. Unamused, 2 big lawn care firms have demanded the ads be pulled or the companies will take appropriate action. Rising grassroots concern has attracted political attention to what was already a front yard issue. The Senate is considering new truth in advertising laws, and force lawn care companies to post yard signs days ahead of any spraying of chemicals.
There has to be a foolproof system for people like us, because our lives are on the line.
It has long been one of the dreams by which Americans measured their success. A home surrounded by a deep, weed-free yard. Only now are we starting to ask whether the price is too high. Eric Engbert, CBS News, Washington. If you want more information about the safety of a detective,
I'll go on and read another letter from This is a letter from Dr. Donald Gillespie. This is a letter to indicate my support for the pesticide warning sign ordinance, including the 24-hour pre-notification and the 48-hour post-usage warning period, which the Missoula City Council is considering passing. This appears to be a very common-sense approach to warning the public about the possible dangers of exposure to pesticides. It is not too restrictive and yet allows the public the opportunity to avoid exposure if they so wish. I would strongly encourage passage of this ordinance. Dr. Gillespie's specialty is allergy, asthma, and clinical immunology. Further testimony.
My name is Barry Dutton. I reside at 720 Dickinson in the Rattlesnake. For over a decade now, I've acted as a natural resource consultant on a variety of weed and pesticide management and research projects. Currently, I'm working with Glacier National Park and U of M on weed management plans. I work with dozens of farmer-rancher clients each year developing integrated crop and pest management plans dealing with pesticides, but also work with a full range of folks from the completely organic to the most highly intensive chemical users in western Montana. Aside from the health issues involved here tonight, I don't want to address them. The fact is we don't have all the answers about the health issues of pesticide use. Aside from the environmental concerns, we have a number of perhaps environmental disasters, but I don't want to speak to them tonight here. We have a lot of financial concerns in dealing with pesticides, but I think the fact is that it all boils down to public concern over the use of these chemicals and the fact that folks want to know what's being used. I want to know when I go out into a field what my clients have been using out there. Likewise, in my own home community here, in my own neighborhood, I'd like to know what my neighbors are using so that I can then assess my risk and take the responsibility myself to control my exposure. I think that, in fact, an ordinance like this will benefit the entire chemical community, the applicators themselves, et cetera, by bringing this issue out into the public a little more, making us all aware, making this debate over chemical use a little more public, and bringing the responsibility of it onto all of us. I think the ordinance of this type has worked elsewhere. I think it can work here in Missoula. I don't think it will be an unfair burden of anyone, and I encourage you all to adopt this ordinance tonight. Thank you very much for commenting.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Tony Tweedale, 224 Pine Street East. I want to try to drive home as much as I can just how little is known about all this wide variety of chemicals that have been being used over the last few decades. I just have a couple brief quotes from two articles. Fall of 1982, this is from an environmental journal. Chemical companies use the exemption process as a way of selling their products before the EPA has had a chance to review all of the health and safety data necessary for full registration. In 1980, EPA approved applications for 198 exemptions and denied 1976. In 81, EPA approved 298 and denied only 24. From a different article about the same time period, after a 7-year-long review of its files, EPA ruled this year, this is 1983, I believe, EPA ruled this year that less than 10% of the studies are scientifically valid. I think last year you heard about industrial biotest laboratories out of Chicago, which was responsible for our best estimates up to about 70% of all the toxicology tests done in the country over a period of several years.
The government was able to find these people guilty of fairly massive fraud, substituting completely false data page after page. There's one quote I have here, but there's no time to go into that. More colloquially, I've heard of two examples over the years back on the East Coast of people dying from exposure to herbicides after spending the day on the golf course. There just isn't enough known about the wide variety of chemicals. There's a range of acute exposure, dermal exposure, anywhere from 5 parts per million for the most highly acute to 6 parts per thousand for the moderately acute chemicals. There's a wide range of chemicals out there, and it would be really nice if we could start to learn what's being used at what time, at what spot. To sum up, then, I'd just say that there's a lot of advantages to be gained here for a fairly small cost to the professional applicators who I think have a valid point that they might be slightly inconvenienced for a 24-hour pre-notification. I hope the council can find a way of working with that. I think a 24-hour pre-notification has valid health reasons behind it. Maybe we can come up with a solution there. And finally, I'd just like to address the point that the man from Ecolab made. The professional sprayers, well, he said that in his case, he had a clean bill of health, and his family too. But this ordinance is not aimed just at professional sprayers. It's also aimed at the amateur gardeners, people in their own homes who don't know all the rules of how to mix the chemicals, when to spray them, and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll ask for further testimony, but I'll also remind you that this is the second round of testimony that we've heard, and we've had almost an hour of it this evening. And if you could just double-check your notes before you come up and make sure that you're not saying something that's been said once, if not 5 or 6 times already. Thank you. Mr. Potts?
Sometime on this testimony, I have a letter that I would like to read into the record.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Bud Stevers. I live at 6740 Mormon Creek Road in Lolo. I'm the owner-operator of Pro Lawn. It's a professional lawn care service. I've furnished you all with a newsletter from Dowie Landco Chemicals Company, in which C. Everett Koop, the former U.S. Surgeon General, was the keynote speaker in the 1991 Pesticides in Perspective Forums. It's held in Indianapolis in March. In this article, I've highlighted several quotes from Mr. Koop regarding the use of pesticides. He states, and I quote, "For 8 years, I represented you at the World Health Organization and with our contacts with the Food and Agricultural Organization. I had a window on the considerable effort of these two bodies to make in order to assure the safety of the food supply for this entire planet. The spin-off from those extensive studies contribute to our knowledge of pesticides as they pertain to the subjects of your meetings over the next several days. Now, the public's protection from problems people think that they have with pesticides on their lawns," still quoting Mr. Koop, "comes first in regulation. And that means that every pesticide used in this country has to be registered with the EPA. And in order to do that, it means that well over 1,000 tests have to be performed, and all these have to do with the health and the environment. The second thing that protects the consumer is the manufacturer. The very best protection the consumer has in this country against a pesticide being detrimental to his health or environment is the manufacturer's fear of liability in our society today. There is really no risk to the consumer from the use of lawn pesticides when they are used as label directed." This is still quoting the former Surgeon General. The greatest hazard of the use of lawn pesticides is to those who are professionally occupied with their application. So if we're thinking about those involved in the industry in this application, we have to think about those who use it, who mix it, store it, transport it, manufacture it, and prepare the raw materials before manufacture. But these risks also give the consumer his greatest protection because over the years of exposure of employees of these various concerns involved in the use of lawn pesticides, they have not shown any ill effects either acutely or chronically. And the ordinary household consumer is exposed to only a tiny fraction of the relative high exposure that these folks show, and still no evidence of chronic or acute disease. This coincides with the statement that Mr. Bass from Lawnmaster made last week, the study from the University of Cincinnati, that over 100 professional lawn applicators have been tested that have been in the business for 10 years. They too show no acute or chronic medical problems. I urge you to vote this proposed ordinance down. I don't think you have the funds or the people with the knowledge to police it. And I feel that the people that I've talked to says, well, if that's the case, then I'll do my own. And I think that's one of the worst scenarios we can have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Luceno.
If this ordinance were passed, what effect would this have on your business?
The effect that it would have on our business, we do not spray in the rain, we do not spray in the wind. As you know, for the last few days, what effect would it have on our business? Would it rain tomorrow? The weather forecaster can't tell us. Is the wind going to blow tomorrow? They can't tell us. Those signs would remain up indefinitely.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Other testimony?
My name is Don Doffey. I live at 2200 South 5th West, and I represent Orkin Pest Control.
Could you pick the microphone up just a little bit?
A little bit more. How's this?
Good.
Ladies and gentlemen of the council, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm going to try to weed out some of the things that are repetitive because I had some of the same things that they were talking about, so to keep it a little bit shorter. But things I do want to cover is the manner in which the ordinance has been written shows to me that it is only designed to do one thing, and that is to put another industry out of the business in the state of Montana. Not only are these people asking you to take away our right to do business, but they're also asking you to spend money trying to enforce a ludicrous law with an already overtaxed labor force. Some of the before-mentioned people that have thought that probably there would be very little effect on people like me in my industry, most of those people that I know of have not come to me and asked me what it would cost me to do business in the state of Montana or in Missoula if an ordinance like this came into effect. In talking with my manager and assuming that we're aware of all the things that are in the law, it would cause me to double my working time, 50%, approximately 50% of the proposals that I go on when I sit down and explain to the people what the problems are and what needs to be done, I do that business right away. In this case, I would have to post a sign, or they would have to post a sign, and I would have to go back and take that travel time and that time to do it all over again. So it's going to double my working time, which in effect digs deep into my pocketbook and also my company and the rigs and the things that we use in traveling. I make my living doing structural pest control on homes and businesses in Missoula and the Bitterroot area. The quantity of chemical I apply to home consists of 2/3 of an ounce to 1 or 2 gallons of diluted chemical at the maximum. Precisely applied to cracks and crevices and voids in a structure. In order for anyone to get contaminated, they would have to climb into the cracks
and stay there for up to 4 to 6 hours to even pick up any exposure. These chemicals are USDA and EPA approved to be applied by licensed individuals like myself. Orkin and many of the other pest control companies in Missoula service a large number of residents, both of the hospitals, and along with several clinics because of ant problems and other insects that don't know they aren't supposed to climb across the exam tables and the sanitary areas, along with other insects that are disease-carrying and carry allergies and those sort of things like roaches and carpenter ants, which do a considerable amount of structural damage. Orkin has amongst its ranks employees who have been applying chemicals 5 days a week for 25 to 30 years. They have shown no ill effects, nor have the families they have raised during this time, some of whom also have become Orkin technicians. I have been a resident of Missoula for 13 years. My wife and my children have been raised here. I want to continue to live and pay taxes in an industrious, prosperous Montana, not to live in welfare or live with insects that can destroy our homes and carry disease. Thank you very much.
Mr. Luceno.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. First of all, when you're doing your pesticide control, or your pest control, excuse me, inside structures, and you are applying it to cracks within the structures, as you say, how wide would you say the spray is at the point of contact? Excuse me. And second, are you saying then there's absolutely no airborne, there's no airborne chemicals at all? It's all 100% contained within that crack? And my first question, going back to that, is how wide is the spray when it comes out of the nozzle, and how wide is it when it meets, when it makes contact with the surface?
Okay. According to the labels on the chemicals themselves, especially the aerosol type that aren't a fogging agent, but they're a crack and crevice type treatment, they have a tip on them, which, and I also have it on my spray can, which has a hole in the end of it that is the size of a needle, just a regular sewing needle or anything like that. And that is the piece of equipment that I use, and what we do is put it down along the cracks of the baseboards underneath, and so when it comes out in a pin stream, okay? And for the exterior, we use a light fan spray, which is, again, I'm licensed for structural pest control. I don't do any of the other yard or anything like that. We have a fan spray that we use directly on the foundation itself, and that comes out in a form about yay wide. Okay.
Mr. Luceno.
I understand that it's that the orifice is the size of a needle. Are you saying then when it makes contact with the surface that you're spraying, that the spray itself is also as wide as the head of a needle?
Yeah. See, we don't. It's laid down. The tip is laid down along the crack or the crevice, and we run it across like that. So it actually comes in contact with the surface immediately. It's not like a stream that's shot at it or something like that.
So the only time that the spray is wider than that is when you're doing exterior applications?
If we're doing during the foundation, right along the foundation. The other type of exterior that we do is a crack and crevice, like where the siding and the foundation meet. We do service up underneath there.
Just one final question. On the inside work that you do, what percentage of the application is the way you described? Are there other types of applications inside structures that are not this way?
No. All the chemicals that I use are only labeled for that type of service. And so therefore, if I use them in another form, then that's breaking the law of the label, which is a criminal offense.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further testimony? Mr. Mr. Snodgrass, we're limiting this to people who did not testify last time.
I am here at the request of Bill Potts, and I will step back. Bill requested that I deliver a fiscal note for this, and I would step back if you would prefer that.
Well, Bill, if that's what you'd like us to do, that's what we'll do.
Well, that'd be all right.
Okay.
Go ahead, Will.
Also, at the request of Councilwoman Craig, I've been asked to clarify one part of this ordinance which most people seem to be unaware of, and that is that the applicator is not the person who is taxed with putting up the sign, meaning the professional applicator. The burden of putting up the sign lies with the homeowner, so there will be no trips. I think that point has been made time and again. I would also like to point out that the statement you have just heard from the Orkin representative is in fact a violation of federal law, that statement being that his products are EPA approved. For those of you who read the Blue Book, you will note that that is an illegal statement. It's covered by the Federal Trade Commission, which has not enforced the law since 1986. There have been numerous spurious false statements made by this industry over the course of these hearings. I would like to address those issues at the end of this session, if I might, and I will step back at this time. I think it is utterly critical to all of us that these issues are clarified.
I think what Mr. Rice asked last time is that rebuttal be put in the form of writing.
I understand that, but with respect to the fiscal note, I did step up.
Mr. Potts?
Yes. This is a letter given to me by Ted Marcy, who has a tree surgeon, landscape contractor, Christmas trees and fencing, and he is not able to be here. He has illness in his family. He asked me to read this for him. I believe it is time for me to come out of my cocoon and discuss the upcoming pesticide bill before the Missoula City Council. Having practiced in my profession for 52 years, I would like to present a few interesting facts regarding the use of chemicals in our present-day environment. First of all, commercial applicators are strictly controlled in the state of Montana. They're not only licensed and heavily insured, but also must attend seminars every year to keep accreditation. Comprehensive records are kept on each job, which includes all data employed on the job. Professional medical records are quite similar to ours. Do we need more regulations? Are we trying to pattern our mode of living because of some other city or state are highly regulated? Only 15 states to date have pesticide regulations. These are ones in the highly commercial and concentrated areas in the east. Many homeowners are in need of assistance in the application of chemicals. The bulk of chemicals are being distributed in our area by persons having no agricultural background. Now this year, your county extension service has been allocated by the state of Montana $22,000. This sum is to be used for public education in the use of chemicals. Next year, that sum will be increased to $27,000. There are many new biological non-toxic helpmates available today which may be used to combat insects and weeds. I think the general public needs more information and guidance in this direction. To date, the Surgeon General of the United States has confirmed that there is less danger contacting serious ailments from eating fruits and vegetables, but fewer of which can occur when sprayed from handling such danger is ever present. The Montana Senate this year defeated a posting law 12-0, which would have indicated the state wishes no more regulation measures. I've read this bill which is proposed and find it highly explosive in the mandatory regulations. Not only would it be expensive to provide signs, but costly from a labor standpoint. The fine is extremely excessive, almost double that of a drunken driving ticket. Of course, this is a debatable subject. Trying to limit a homeowner to 5 square feet, his own yard, is simply ludicrous. Rose growers and fruit tree advocates will certainly resent this bill because fruit trees and roses require constant surveillance. Vegetable gardens, growers would be confined also. I sincerely hope that this bill be rejected in favor of more consumer education. Most respectfully submitted, Ted Marcy, of the nurseryman and agronomist.
All right. Mr. Shea.
Mayor Kemmis, I also have 2 letters from constituents that I would like to read into the record, their testimony. To Mayor Kemmis and members of the City Council, I would like to speak in support of the proposed ordinance to post notification of private and commercial spraying. I firmly believe that it is a matter of simple common decency to inform the people who would be most affected when pesticides will be added to their environment. When chemicals are applied in agriculture, it is disclosed to the public. When the food industry processes food, the ingredients are disclosed to the public. When chemicals are added to our water, it is disclosed to the public. And when chemicals are going to be sprayed into the air we breathe, it should be disclosed to the public. The gardener who has a bug infestation and must wait an additional day to spray cannot justify holding priority over the child or adult resident who may suffer for many days with vomiting, blurred vision, memory loss, or other medical complications due to toxic poisoning. In the name of common courtesy and public health considerations, please vote yes on this proposal. Very truly, Jill Haas, 616 Whitney Lane, Missoula. And the second letter, I am writing in regards to the pesticide warning sign ordinance that will be discussed this Monday, June 17th. Since I cannot be in attendance, I would appreciate your reading this letter at that meeting. As an asthmatic and chemically sensitive individual, I support wholeheartedly the ordinance that would require posting before and after chemical use by industries and individuals. I've been around pesticide application, and I know that it can cause skin irritation, severe headaches, and shortness of breath. Posting would allow all Missoula citizens, and particularly those who are chemically sensitive, the option of avoiding treated areas. I support the 24-hour advanced and 48-hour post-treatment notice. I can warn my children to avoid those areas where they are choosing a direction to take the family pet for a walk. We caution our children to look both ways when crossing the street. Be careful of strangers and follow the rules when riding bicycles. We should also caution them to avoid treated areas. There should be adequate notification that chemicals are being applied. Signs should be bright and easily read by children, senior citizens, persons with disabilities, and the general public. Posting should be the responsibility of the person or persons applying the chemicals. Ordinances are of little value unless there are consequences for non-compliance. I support strong enforcement of the ordinance. Sincerely, Mike Fredrickson, 1320 Harrison. Thank you.
Mr. Rice.
I should probably have said something at the beginning of last week, but I did not. There was no staff presentation because basically I gave Jim the notes to write this ordinance and I approved the final form, as I think everybody here knows. I would like to comment on a comment that was made last week and which Bill has reiterated here this evening, and that is that the area for spot application is 5 square feet. It is not 5 square feet as is clear in section 6B. It is 5 feet square, which is 5 feet by 5 feet, which is in fact 25 square feet, which is 5 times larger than what is being represented. I doubt that will take care of the objections, but I think it is important to note that we are not talking about 5 square feet. It is not, as Tiny said last week, an area less than the size of a screen door. It is an area that in your average 3 by, say, 6 screen door would be considerably more.
Let's see if we can wrap this hearing up. Is there anybody else that would like to address the council this evening? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Katie Carter, and I'm a resident of Missoula, 612.5 South 4th West, and I just really want to briefly represent the pregnant women and the unborn children in this community, and I want to be given a choice as to whether I'm going to be exposed to chemicals, just like I want a choice as of whether I'm going to be exposed to other environmental pollutants. So I hope that you vote for this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Douglas Miller. I live at 2270 Amigo Drive. It is outside of the city limits. However, I do believe that the way that this ordinance is worded, that it could affect me. I'm a farmer out in the Grass Valley area, and I also farm some acreage inside the Missoula city limits. And I guess what really bothers me more than anything on this ordinance is the very loose term pesticides. Basically, as I've always understood it, pesticides are herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides. Well, if you're going to pass this ordinance as I've read it, almost all homes in Missoula are going to fall in violation of it. Because when you clean your bathrooms, you clean your kitchens, these commercial cleansers that you've purchased are fungicides, most of them. I think we need to have something like this clarified more. I hear a lot of people talking in almost a panic situation, deeming all pesticides totally dangerous. I'm not going to stand here and say that they're not dangerous, because I think that basically any chemical that man has made holds potential hazards. But I think we need to look at it in a lot more logical manner, because what I foresee coming out of something like this is within a very short period of time, certain pesticides being banned. Now, these are pesticides that we pretty much depend on daily to provide us food, keep our homes clean, stuff like this. 25 square foot area is not a very large area. I guess my concern there is the method of application on that 25 square foot area. If you're applying something that's going to be airborne, it's going to spread over considerably farther over that 25 square foot area. You're not going to be able to contain it that well. Now, I'm not saying we're looking at massive drift, because hopefully we're not. I think what we really need to approach, instead of an ordinance like this, I think we need to have a lot more homeowner awareness through all chemicals being sold to them. In other words, I think the basic retailer needs to be educating the public. You know, he's the last person that touches this before these products are being sold to the public. And where we farm from 600 to 1,000 acres of crop a year, if we were to fall into an area where all of a sudden we would lose these pesticides, I'm out of business. Now, I'm not saying that we try to indiscriminately use pesticides. That's not our intent. We want to use as few as possible, but we do open our property up to hunting, to fishing. We get insects brought in on vehicles that we wish we'd never seen, like alfalfa weevils. Because we are close to Missoula, we go to different forms of insect control. We do early cutting on the alfalfa instead of spraying. We do get knapweed come in on vehicles of hunters, fishermen. If we're going to be what I foresee within the foreseeable future with an ordinance like this that is not labeling all pesticides as they should be, we're going to see pesticides taken away from our use. And I'm out of business without it. I can't compete against the people in the larger growing areas that can do it so much more efficiently than we can. And that's my concern. I don't think this ordinance was that well thought out, that well worded. I'm not against posting if it's something that really would give us the benefits that we need. But I think that at this point, before we go to this point, I think we really need to educate the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Rice?
I wonder if the previous speaker would yield to a question.
Mr. Miller, could we get you back up here for a question? Thank you.
Mr. Miller, I was wondering if you would be willing to suggest, and you don't have to do that now, but at some point before, say, Thursday, some alternative language for the pesticide.
Okay, one of the things I forgot to point out in this, your average dog flea and tick collars, they're going to spread out much more over that 25 square foot area. I mean, how do you label the dog? You know, I'm not saying that to be facetious.
No, yeah, I think we do understand that.
But what I'm saying is that, you know, we've got a problem that I don't think I can answer.
Okay, if you have some idea of somebody who could answer that question, we'd love to hear from them.
Okay, but I guess what I'm worried about is just it's the overall ramification of labeling something as a pesticide where the general public doesn't know that it is a pesticide. Thank you.
Further testimony.
I didn't really come to this meeting to say anything, but I find that I have to.
Okay, Can you pull that down and then...
My name is Georgiana Eglund. I live at 401 Brook Street. I've lived there for 35 years. Am I missing something here? Doesn't this ordinance merely say that you have to put up a sign? It doesn't say you can't spray. It just says you have to put up a sign. I'd like to see a sign. I can walk across the street and avoid the sprayed area. I don't see what the big problem is here about putting up a sign. And as far as the dog collars go, they have a sign or a warning on them for pregnant dogs, not for pregnant women.
Thank you. Any other testimony?
My name is Dave Mywald, and I live at 2700 Old Quarry Road. And I'm also the general manager of the Best Western Executive and Creekside Inn. And as a homeowner, I kind of question the city's willingness and ability to enforce this ordinance. I have a feeling that it turned much into the snow removal ordinance that unless there's a complaint from a neighbor, it really isn't enforced. Professionally, I am deeply concerned about what this ordinance would do to my business. We have a business that is very dependent on appearance, and I question what the little yellow and orange signs in front of my business are going to do. I've been with the motels for 14 years, and I have never had any customer come back and question what we used as far as our pest removal. I have had people come back and ask about the room fresheners, smoking, and other chemicals, but never anything with the pests. And I am one of those ones that when I call a professional, 90% of the time I need it done today because of the appearance. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Dave Taylor. I live at 2311 Tower. I've operated a roofing business in Missoula for about 15 years, and I would just like to make mention of some of the inconvenience this industry has caused me. There have been numerous situations in those years where we were forced to immediately leave the job because these men would roll up with their equipment and spray trees directly adjacent to the roofs we'd be working on. And it not only makes me question what in the world am I breathing and what are the long-term effects, but it hurts my pocketbook too, just as much as these gentlemen say it hurts theirs. Thanks.
Thank you.